Okay, so I was watching this movie, and it was about the main character. She was like getting super anxious about what life was going to be in high school, and she was at this camp, and she went with her friends, but her friends told her that they weren't going to be with her in high school. And so she saw this girl who she really liked, and she was like, okay, so I'm going to stay with her and be friends with her. And like, it was so sad because throughout like the whole camp, the whole purpose of going to camp was to like spend those like last few months with her friends from middle school. And instead, she decided to be with that other girl, and she left her friends behind because her mentality was my happiness comes first. And it's just so sad because like I saw it in this movie and I was like, how dare she like do something like that? But I feel like we do that a lot. We make decisions based off of, well, my happiness comes first. So I have to prioritize my happiness over other people's. And like she hurt the feelings of her friends. Like they weren't gonna like see her in high school. And I really think that we need to, like, this is something that we should talk about. Like, why do we even say my happiness comes first? Why do we have that mentality?
I don't know why we have the mentality, but like looking back, I know that I've made so many choices, like thinking that, but not saying those words. Like just prioritizing, like, okay, I am what decision is best for me, even though that might have hurt someone else, you know?
Mm, yeah. I feel like sometimes like I mean when we're little kids, like it's kind of like all about us. And I don't know if it's because like we don't mature early enough, like we maintain that mentality where it's like it's all about me. And like it can really strain our relationships because we make decisions where we put ourselves first, like my happiness first, and we don't care if we're harming other people's feelings. We don't care how it'll affect them. And what that will do in the future is that they're not going to trust us as much anymore because they're going to already know, oh, this person doesn't care if they hurt me. And that's why like I definitely feel like this is something we should talk about because there is a fine line between like you like just protecting yourself and making like decisions that are like for your own welfare and you being egocentric. There's a very fine line.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, there is a very fine line in there, and I really like. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking for happiness. I think that's a really good thing. You know, like who wants to spend their days being sad? You know, like it makes sense as to why you want to find happiness in the things that you do, and for you. But like you said, there's a very thin line, and we have to be very, very, very careful to not cross that line because sometimes trying to find our own happiness, we end up hurting other people and we end up hurting their happiness. You know, we end up hurting their life, their situation, their where they are at because we're so focused on ourselves. And like that's the way, like when we like talking about this, like that's the way I see it. Like how can I be so egocentric about being happy and not take into consideration other people? You know, there's other people with life. There's other people that are also looking for the same things that I'm looking, being fulfilled with things that I also want to be fulfilled. Like I'm not the only one, right? So I don't think it's fair that I'm always, looking for my happiness and only that coming first. Because one thing is looking for my happiness. Another thing is prioritizing it and let that be the first thing. It's like nothing else matters but me. I come first, then the rest, has this as his part.
Yeah, and it's not just that. I feel like our society has kind of taught us to have the mentality of my happiness versus your happiness. I mean, they kind of like yourself. Yeah, like they structure everything in society as a competition. I mean, whenever you're trying to get like a high position, you have to compete with others. Getting that position is going to be position. Sorry. It's going to be, I don't know. It could be like the source of happiness for someone, which that's another topic. But like our society has made it a competition. Like we both want that thing. That thing is going to make us happy. We're going to have to fight for it. It's either my happiness or yours. Like it's so sad. And it can be very damaging in whenever you're trying to have like meaningful relationships with other people, because we've grown up in this society where we have to compete. Like, it can't be my happiness and your happiness. No, it has to be my happiness over yours.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I don't think that's the best way to live, guys.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I work consistently around children, and I was talking to Joe about this, that like I've noticed that they have that problem. Like, I want to be happy. Like, it's all about them. And I was talking to him, I was like, where does that start? Like, do they see that? Like, are we born with that? Like, it's so weird because we always try to like me, you know? We don't have that like, oh no, like let's share, like, you know, let's just give this peace.
Yeah, and it even comes to the point where we have an inability to celebrate others people's accomplishments. Because we want to share like all of our accomplishments with other people. But when other people succeed, that's where the envy comes in. Yeah. That's when we start talking trash about them, saying that they didn't really earn it, that they, I don't know, they had people on the side, that they didn't really work as hard, that they were advantaged. Like, we can't just celebrate with them.
It's not even like saying it on the side. Sometimes we don't say anything, but we let those things in us, and we let that grow in us. We become that. We're always envy of everything else. And something that I wanted to bring, I don't know if you guys ever seen this clip, but I saw this clip, and it was a race. I don't know if it was like a marathon type of thing. I don't even know what it was. I don't think it was a marathon. I think it was a race. It was just a regular race. And is there in the competition? There's two brothers. And one of the brothers, he's in first place, but he's already like super tired. Like, you see him running, he's like he has no control over his body at that point, and he's almost at the finish line. Like, he's really close, and he falls because he couldn't like handle it. He tried getting himself up, tried to keep going so that he could finish it, but he couldn't. And then in that same part, there was the guy that was in second place, and then his brother. So the guy that was in second place, he kept going and he reached first place, right? But the brother, he went and picked up his brother from the floor and made him, like, took him to finish the race.
Wow.
But one of the most, I think it was one of the most beautiful things was that the brother who picked him up, when he was at the line, he pushed his brother so that his brother would finish in second place.
Instead of
him, right? And then while we were talking, I was just thinking about that because we also talked about it as if everything is a competition, everything is a race, everything is somewhere where my happiness or your happiness. And I also believe that there are people, right, that have shown us that seeing you happy makes me happy. You know, like being able to give, to be that provider, being able to be that for you, that makes me happy. And I've learned that in many relationships. Like there are people that are givers. They love giving, right? And that is a way that they give, and that makes them happy. And when they see you receive what they have given you, they love seeing your face. They love seeing how you react. They love seeing all of that because they love to give. You know, their happiness and it's not that their happiness depends on your happiness, but they love to see other people happy. And that is like another part of, I think that's how happiness should be like. You know, like, I'm not envy of you, but because you're happy, I'm also happy. I'm able to have happiness within what you have, you know, and not envy. And that becomes something very beautiful. And many people that are like this, I believe for them to be very mature, very understanding. And for me, it's very wonderful. Like, I've had many experiences like that, and it's pretty wonderful. It's amazing.
Yeah. I feel, though, like we should touch on something, because this statement where we say my happiness comes first, like, we talked about how it could lead us to become very egocentric. We said how, like, it's a very fine line, and that's true. But I feel like for some people, that statement right there can be a healthy boundary when they have those people-pleasing tendencies. Because there's some people where they do literally everything in their power to please other people, no matter how it might affect them. They don't know how to say no. At the cost of their own happiness or like their own needs. And it's usually due, I was researching a little bit, and it's usually due to a rejection, to a fear of rejection. And so
I have something for that. Oh my God.
so I feel like we need to look at that statement. Like whenever we take it to the extreme, yes, there's a very fine line to us becoming very egocentric, having that inability to see the needs of others, a lack of empathy, and that's true. But for some people, this is a needed statement in their lives because they need to know that you need to put your needs first, because how are you going to be able to help someone else if you're not, like, if you can't help yourself, you know? So it's a necessary boundary, and I feel like we should talk about that for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, sorry. I thought you had something to say. You were really excited.
I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking a lot. But no, I'll say it real quick. It's just when you were saying, I have like the best example. I have a friend. He's like the best example. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he knows who he is when he listens to this. So it's okay though. It's fine. But he used to be like that. He got into many relationships being like that, being friendships, being with girlfriends, you know, with parents, all of that, right? So he would always be the pleaser, and it did cost him a lot. You know, he was. You always see a weight on him. You would always see him carry so much, like. It was just, I'm like, at some point we were like, yo, like, bro, you need to also think about your happiness.
Right.
Because how the things that we would say to him was, how can you please someone when you cannot even do that for yourself? How can someone become so important when you are not putting yourself as important, right? So it was really, really hard for him. And right now he's in a good process where he's learning. And he has learned to put himself first. And he had a situation where with his girlfriend was like, hey, we don't gotta do this if you don't want to. Like, you know, if you don't want to do this, it's okay. Like we can agree to not, you know, we don't have to do this, you know. And he was like, no, but like I wanna, you know, be like, you know, give you what you want, you know, so that you're happy and all that. And she's like, I'm okay. I can be that as well for you. Like you can also have your happiness. Like it's okay. And for him, that was like, what? Because in all his past relationships, it was completely the opposite. It was please me. And he was like, okay, fine. And that was the relationship.
There wasn't that balance.
There was no balance. So when he got into this relationship, he has understood this area a little bit more. And I've seen his growth, and it's amazing. It's really amazing to see that. But it's very sad.
Yeah, because it's as if that's what I said about the balance. Like whenever you don't set that boundary, you're making that other person have more worth and value than yourself. And that's not how God designed us. We all have equal worth and value in his eyes. And we should see ourselves through his eyes like, because that's the truth. Right. And like you said, it strains our relationships whenever we have an imbalance and how we see ourselves and how we see others. And so I definitely feel like it's necessary for us to recognize that. Like sometimes like we should be looking for my happiness and your happiness, right? And throw away that mentality of that competition. But whenever we say your happiness, my happiness, that's also not going to lead to a healthy relationships because we're going to drain ourselves trying to please other people and meeting their expectations when we're barely taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Well, I really liked that you brought that up because when I first looked at like this topic of like my happiness versus yours, I'd never thought about like the whole, like it could be a healthy thing. Like I thought about it like, oh, like dang, that's kind of like a competition and stuff. So I like that you brought that up because I also learned a lot from that, and I thought that it was pretty cool and it's really insightful to other people.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been on both ends where I have at some point gone to the extreme and been like, it's all about me. And sometimes like I don't see like other people suffering because of that. Or sometimes I'm on the other end. And I believe I've led like the fear of rejection like take over my life and be like, no, I need to make sure like I'm like this perfect human being where everyone's happy around me and like there's no disagreement, everything's peaceful and I can be helpful. And I haven't like taken care of myself because of that. And so that is why whenever I read this topic, that's where my mind went, because I have lived through that disbalance. And I'm sure I haven't been the only one, which is why I wanted to. Oh wow, look at that! I didn't realize you guys too. And so that's why I was like, we need to make people aware that this is an issue, and that we need to give ourselves, like, we need to see ourselves with the true value that we have. So
for me, I'll speak a little bit about me at this point for this topic. So for me was it was really hard to please people, especially when like I put a lot of weight on myself and I always had to fulfill. Like I would make these crazy expectations for myself that were impossible to please people, right? To be what my parents want me to, what I thought my parents wanted me to be, because that's not really what they wanted me to be. What my peers wanted me to be, myself, at church, my calling. Like I put so much weight on myself. Like I put more weight than I ever need. Like nobody needs that much weight, and that led me into a very deep depression because I did not know how to fulfill those things. And because
usually they're unrealistic.
Yeah, they're really unrealistic, and I wanted to do all these things, and I just couldn't. And like I really, like I went into this, like I was like it was a dark, dark hole, like where it was just impossible. It was impossible, and there was no amounts of things that I would do to be able to reach that. And a lot of things came to my head. A lot of things went through me because I had so much weight that the thoughts were, you know what? If this is what people expect of me, I'll be better off if I'm not here.
Wow.
It goes all the way. Like I went to a certain extreme, something that I didn't think that was going to affect me because I just wanted to make people happy. I just wanted to please people. Instead of putting my happiness, when we talk about it in that sense. And I wanted to please so much that I went to that point, and up until a certain point in my life where I've understood that it is important, but it's also important to love myself. How can I love somebody else? How can I be happy with other people or give people if I'm not able to do that for myself?
Right.
And I learned that the harsh way, and now I can say that I will prioritize my happiness, but I'm not prioritizing it over people.
Because again, it's that mentality of my happiness and your happiness.
Yeah, like a few days ago, I had a disagreement with someone, and they told me like, hey, it's not just about how you feel, it's also about how I feel, right? I understand how you feel, just don't discard it, right?
Right.
And I honestly, I didn't even notice that I was doing that, I didn't even notice, and I was like, you're right, and I'm so sorry. Like, I'll take that into consideration now. And it's those little things to remind us. So it's very important.
Yeah, and I feel like it's important to recognize too that there are going to be moments where my happiness kind of conflicts with yours, because maybe we have different belief systems, maybe we have different things that I don't know that we want. But I feel like that's when we take the moment to be like, well, I need to realize that your happiness is important too. So how about we make a compromise? And that's where, like, a compromise is where we both pitch in and see, how can I make sure that we both fulfill like our needs and what we need, so that we can value both of our happiness, because they have equal worth. And that's not easy. That is not easy at all. But I mean, I was studying a little bit and I realized that Jesus did this, God did this, right? We rejected him. Him being with us was gonna, like, that was his delight, that was his happiness, but that's not what we wanted. And so he did a compromise. He said, well, okay, then you get to choose. If you want to do that and that makes you happy, then you go do that, even though it hurts me, right? But here, let me do a compromise. I'll prepare a way. I'll make a way for you to come back to me and make, right? Be able, like, for us to be happy together, if that's what you decide. And so that's where he provided the way with Jesus. But like, it's crazy because God didn't force us to be with him so that we could be happy, right? He made a compromise. And if he could do it, and he's, the creator of the universe, I think we can follow his example and do the same. Even though it sounds very hard. It sure is.